Everybody's take their seat. We'll get started. Welcome to the first meeting of the Interim Joint Committee on Economic Development and Workforce Investment for the 2021 Interim. Along with Co-Chair Schroeder and Co-Chair King, we'd like to welcome all the members. I'm going to ask Sashi to call the roll and ask each member when they answer the roll to indicate the response whether they are here in my Frankfurt office or here remotely. Please call the roll.
Senator Gardler, Senator Carr, Senator McDaniel, Senator Mills,
Here in person.
Senator Southworth, Senator Storm,
Present in the room.
Senator Thomas, Senator Wheeler, Senator Wilson, Senator Yates, Representative Baker,
In person.
Representative Beckler,
Here in the flesh.
Representative Bojanowski,
I am here in person.
Representative Branscombe,
Here in person.
Representative Brown, Representative Callaway,
Here in person.
Representative Donahue,
Yes, ma'am. Present.
Representative Dotson, Representative Pfister, Representative Frazier,
Present in the room.
Representative Freeland, Representative Fugit,
Present in the room.
Representative Goforth, Representative Gooch,
Present in the room.
You'll be around, right?
We'll take a little break for technical difficulties.
Representative Hale,
Present in the room.
Representative Heath, Representative
Present from my district.
Thank you. Representative Huff, Representative Kirk McCormick,
Present in the room.
Representative Koenig, Representative Lawrence,
Present from my district.
Representative Miller,
Right here in the room.
Representative Palumbo,
Here in my annex office.
Representative Raymond,
Here from home.
Representative Reed,
Here in the room.
Representative Roberts,
Present in person.
Representative Rowland, Representative Sheldon,
Here in the room.
Representative Stevenson, Representative Tackett Lafferty, Representative Tate,
Present remotely.
Representative Timoney,
Here in the room.
Representative Wesley,
In the room.
Representative White,
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Schroeder,
Present in the room. Thank you.
Co-Chair King,
Present in the room.
Co-Chair Pratt.
Present in the room. Thank you.
Representative Brown, present in the annex.
Representative Goforth, present in the district.
Representative Dotson, remotely.
Representative Pfister from the district.
Representative Freeland from remotely.
Senator David Yates is watching from district.
We have a quorum. All right. For those of you who are participating remotely, our committee staff is monitoring the chat function in the Zoom application. If you have a question or want to make a comment, please indicate in the chat box. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, you can also let staff know that you are present in the chat box if we didn't get you during the roll call. If you are participating remotely, please keep your microphone muted unless you are speaking. Meeting materials are also available on the LRC website. A link was previously provided to all members. All right, we're ready to go. So at this point in time, we'd like to bring up the Kentucky Retail Federation. Please approach the desk, introduce yourself for the records, and proceed.
All right, very good. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name's Todd Griffin, president of the Kentucky Retail Federation based here in Frankfort.
I'm Kevin Cranley. I'm the chairman of the Kentucky Retail Federation and also the president of the Willis Music Company.
Turn your mic on when you're speaking, sir, please.
Sorry.
Here, please.
You want me to say it again?
Yes, please.
There you go.
Okay. My name's Kevin Cranley. I'm the chairman of the Kentucky Retail Federation and also the president of the Willis Music Company in Florence and also Lexington.
Hi, and I'm Cassie Grigsby, Senior Vice President of the Kentucky Retail Operations and Development of Kentucky Retail Federation and President of the Kentucky Retail Institute.
All right, thank you. It's good to be with you all this afternoon, and thanks very much for the invite to visit with you for just a few minutes this morning. By way of background, the Kentucky Retail Federation is a trade association representing a vast array of retailers. I believe when we last checked, we have members in every county across the Commonwealth. The retail industry in Kentucky is the largest single private sector employer. And of course, as you all know and recognize, it drives the economy, creating jobs in local communities. And as a matter of fact, 26%, one in every four jobs is supported by the retail industry here in the Commonwealth. There's about 56,000 retail establishments across Kentucky, employing almost 430,000 Kentuckians. Over a year ago, retailers were forced to make really seismic shifts in how they do business due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And really, they started shifting their workforce to fit some new models within retailing. Some of those, for example, that you may be familiar with and some of you all have gotten accustomed to is what we call buy online, purchase in store, where retail locations really became micro warehouses. And so a lot of those sales associates shifted from cashiers or stockers to filling orders that were made online where customers would come in and pick up. Retailers were forced to take other measures like reducing store hours, and they turned to automation wherever they could just to save money and to fit in with all the different requirements they were going to have to fit in with, like robotic floor cleaners, and they started putting out a lot more self-checkout lanes. Many of these business practices are here to stay, and it's because customers have gotten accustomed to shopping that way. And from the surveys that we've seen, a lot of them like to shop that way. It's more convenient and it fits in with their lifestyle. Now, the good news is that there's pent-up demand for shopping, both within stores and online, which we're very glad to see. We're glad to see retail come back. We're glad to see customers coming back to the stores and spending money. As a matter of fact, the National Retail Federation just recently revised its retail sales forecast, and they anticipate that retail sales will now grow between 10 and 13% by the end of the year. That is just outstanding. It's unbelievable. So we hope that that does come to fruition. It's a good thing for the industry, but if stores can't get associates and workers to come into the stores, they're going to have real challenges meeting the expectations that shoppers have when they come in. So now that Kentucky's opening, retailers are facing a new challenge, and that's trying to hire enough people. No doubt you all have seen some of the hiring announcements by some of the major chains like Texas Roadhouse and Kroger. They're needing tens of thousands of workers and employees across the United States. Not to mention, if you drive around any of your local communities within your district, you can't help but see now hiring signs in store windows. So retailers of all sizes, they've got positions they need to fill. Many of them are being pretty creative. They're offering bonuses, signing bonuses, pay increases. They're adding benefits to their packages. But they're having a tough time balancing these increased labor costs with their operating budgets. They simply, a budget is a budget. You only have so much money that can go around. So there's certainly some challenges, especially for the smaller independent operators out there that are competing for talent. So in preparation for the meeting today, Mr. Chairman, we decided to survey our members. We did this very quickly just to try to get some idea and some feedback from our folks as to what they're hearing and seeing out there. And by and large, it verified the anecdotal stories and comments that we were hearing and were seeing in the media. From a quick survey of members, just about every one of them had positions to fill. That wasn't surprising. They're offering benefits, as I said before, including health insurance, retirement plans, paid time off, flexible scheduling. The overwhelming majority are paying $10 to $15 an hour average starting wage. So that's a starting wage, $10 to $15 an hour. And they're telling us that they're seeing fewer job applicants prior to the pandemic. We asked our members to tell us the reasons they hear that a job applicant may not accept an offer of employment, and I thought these were some interesting results. So 80% of the time, they're hearing that it's because of the federal unemployment insurance benefit payment, the extra $300. 40% of the time, they're hearing that it's a childcare or family responsibility as a reason that someone could not accept a job. And we hear that as well. So that corroborates with what we hear all the time. 23% of the workers have health concerns due to COVID. 10% decline a job because of a required drug test. And we know that is still a challenge out there in the workforce. Some workers took advantage of the pandemic to learn other skills and just move to other fields. Some have retired. And sadly, I hate to sit here and say, but some decided that they don't feel safe working in a retail environment. And we've all seen during the pandemic the rudeness of customers and even violence that's occurred in retail establishments. So I know the labor shortage has brought the attention of everybody, but let me be clear and say, too, that we had a labor shortage before the pandemic. We saw a lot of now hiring signs in 2018, 2019, and truck drivers is a great example. That's been a shortage area for a long, long time. So, we still have a lot of challenges out there. But retailers they're dynamic, they persevere, and we have one today that's with us. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Cranley.
Thanks, Todd. So my company, the Willis Music Company, we've persevered for 122 years. We've been in business. So we started in 1899, and I followed the footsteps of my father and my grandfather. And our youngest daughter will take over leadership of the company, hopefully in the near future. We'll see how that goes. But everything is going very well for us, considering we just came through a pandemic. So the Retail Federation represents retailers across the state naturally. And there are some very large retailers in our group, and then there's many like myself that are small retailers. The large ones, they were considered essential businesses. So really they had a pretty good year. But for the rest of us, we were non-essential and we were closed. So at Willis, we were closed for about 2 months from mid-March through mid-May. During that time, we did have to furlough some of our retail staff, but we kept a core group that kept the business going and at the same time communicated with some of our best customers who are band directors. So that's a big part of our business. We are still not back to full hours or the same days of operation. In fact, I think the pandemic has changed our business in some ways that will be permanent. We have less hours, so we don't have as large a staff, but the staff we have are the ones that have been with us the longest, that are the most effective on the job. So they are earning more money. So that's been a good thing all the way around for us. We are still not reopening on Sunday, and I think that might stay as a permanent thing, which is really fine with me. So our business has certainly picked up. Things have gotten better due to that. Really, our team has been just tremendous through all of this. I couldn't stress that more, but the PPP funds also help significantly. Our biggest struggle has been our school business. So we rent instruments to parents and students in the fall, or August, September of each year. And because of last year, so schools weren't opening, So bands were either non-existent or very limited in what they could do activity-wise. So we rent in those 2 months, and then we collect the rental payments monthly throughout the remainder of the school year and beyond, because some students stay in band for several years. So that was all gone for us. So that was a big deal. Each month we're down in that part of the business, and we are greatly looking forward to August and September, which are coming pretty quickly, I'm glad to say. But what I'm hearing and seeing all over the state are retailers, especially restaurants, who can't open because they can't find workers, as Todd talked about. From our survey, the top reason are those unemployment benefits. And I never understood why we didn't just make our workers whole. And then if we needed more economic stimulus, then why not do it outside of the employment realm? But that's behind us. So let's look to the future. I was very happy to hear yesterday that the governor came out with some ideas that we are actively promoting, and that is paying people or incentivizing people to go back to work and not to stay at home. I know of 6 states that are doing such programs. So they're offering a benefit for those who were unemployed that accepted new jobs that stay employed for X number of weeks. And there's a variety from these states. There's variation on it. And these states are Arizona, Colorado, Connecticut, New Hampshire, Oklahoma, and Montana. And our staff would be happy to get those programs to anyone here. We have those available. So the retail industry is, like Todd said, the largest employer in the Commonwealth. And we suffer from an inaccurate perception. Sure, we have entry-level jobs. Many of us in this room probably started while we were in school working our first jobs at a McDonald's or somewhere similar. But I'm here to tell you, as a 122-year-old company, there's many retailers like myself that we support families. We support careers and a high standard of living for many Kentuckians. From our survey, $10 to $15 an hour starting wage, what Todd said, was very common. But we are taking another step. We're developing a program for retail training for our schools and for our members that my colleague Cassie Grigsby will talk about and explain further. But I want to thank you for your time today, and I look forward to any questions you might have. Thank you. Cassie?
Thank you, Kevin. Good afternoon. As Kevin mentioned, I am here to talk about this program. The Kentucky Retail Institute is a 501c3 organization created by the Kentucky Retail Federation, focusing on workforce development, industry awareness, and education. Through member surveys, focus groups, and many conversations, we consistently hear retailers of all types and sizes struggle to find employees. They are not just referring to frontline employees. This also includes managers and all positions on all levels. In fact, we are seeing signs in the labor market where skill sets needed for job openings do not match the skill set level of the applicants. Therefore, we are currently creating a nationally recognized apprenticeship and training program approved by the U.S. Department of Labor that's called Retail Operations Specialist. The apprenticeship is a 1 to 2 year program depending on full or part-time status of the individual participating, and includes both on-the-job training and web-based or classroom-related technical instruction. This program covers many segments of retail, such as customer service, marketing, ordering and purchasing, product, back office, store security, and several other additional areas. The goal with this apprenticeship is to teach or give the apprentice an overall understanding of operating a retail establishment. In addition to the apprenticeship, an employer has the opportunity to purchase individual training modules if they want to focus on training employees on one particular subject matter. As consumers shopping in a store, we don't always consider people and positions required to get that product to the shelf for us to purchase. Someone must order the product, receive it, track the inventory and shipments, market the product, issue payments for the inventory, and process payroll for the employees that perform these tasks. In addition, they have to follow local, state, and federal laws to properly operate the business and employ individuals. In my example, there are at least 5 different positions, including a buyer, inventory control, marketing, accounting, and human resources, some of which you would not usually consider as retail jobs. As mentioned earlier a couple times, the retail industry is the largest private employer in the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and there are many career opportunities in this industry. The Kentucky Retail Institute is striving to be a leader across the nation for the retail industry. I would like to thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
We do have a question. Representative Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for the information shared today. You shared a number of times about the struggle in the labor force. That was something that was discussed this morning in the economic development meeting as well. Looked into it a little bit, and 25 states have currently opted out of expanded unemployment. Most of the states in the southeastern part of the U.S. have opted out of the expanded unemployment. 5 of the 7 states that border Kentucky have opted out of the unemployment. There's one person who has the authority to opt out of this unemployment expansion and get Kentucky people back to work, and that's the governor. Have you had a conversation with the governor about that? Considering 5 days ago he says that we are no longer in crisis. What has been his response?
So we are a part of a coalition, the Small Business Caucus, that did send a communication letter to the governor asking that he consider to rescind that and not accept the payments. To my knowledge, I don't know that there's been a communication. I'd have to ask our government affairs team to see if they've had any conversations with the governor or his staff at this point.
One follow-up, please. So I will take that as he has not responded. It's unlikely he has responded to that. Thank you very much.
Representative Timoney.
Thank you for the presentation today. Very informative. Mr. Griffin, when you were polling your retail organizations, did you regionally look at the responses you were getting? And the reason why I ask that is, we talk about the $300 in my district. I'm in Lexington, 45th district, and the responses I'm getting are it's abundantly, it's more than 50% are it's daycare opportunities. So the emphasis is not on the $300 because obviously, we look across the state of Kentucky, cost of living is going to range and vary, and $300 is going to get you a lot farther in some communities than it does in Lexington. Did you look at that, and do you have a graphic for us to look at with that?
We did not. No, it was a very quick survey. We just sent it out to all of our members across the state, and we did not ask for region as part of one of the questions, unfortunately. And when we gave them options to choose, they could have chosen the $300 and Childcare. They could have done multiples. So, and I was not surprised that the PUA kind of rose to the top, but we know that Childcare is a huge issue. It's been an issue for many, many years. I know as a parent myself, thank goodness our kids are getting a little older, but when they were younger, oh my gosh, it's a continuing challenge. I know, Kevin, as a business owner, you deal with that every day, I'm sure, with your staff.
Well, we do, and we just remain very flexible in terms of childcare. But like Todd said, this was an issue long before the pandemic too. It's an issue that needs to be addressed. Yeah, we agree.
Definitely. And to go along with that, predominantly it's the moms that stay home in that case. So we're definitely seeing some statistics coming out about women staying home. One follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Cranley.
Yes.
You run an outstanding business, and I want to go ahead and go on the record and officially apologize for the condition of my son's trumpet. The pandemic was rough on the trumpet in our house. Luckily, we paid for the insurance, so please don't hold that against us when we return it.
Well, we're glad that you kept the instrument and he kept playing. That's the main thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Representative Donahue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation today. It's one of the things that I would ask the panel is that do we have any statistics on how many folks are staying home? Because, a lot of times what we do is the perception of what we say. You think that all these folks are staying home because of the $300, and I may say earlier that we had a work shortage prior to the pandemic, okay? And we don't have the right skill sets. And if somebody is, I would like to know if there's a percentage of how many you think folks are doing, and if so, $300, if they're staying home because of the $300, we should look internally and ask ourselves why. Because for $300 is making that much of a difference that some of the folks seem to think that's the issue, then we got a problem here with people not being paid properly or paid enough to what I call a living wage, weekly wage in this state. I do like one thing. I would like to know a percentage. If you don't have it, could you get it to me? It'd be great. And one thing I think is very interesting, because we're never going to go back to the way we were before. And there's a good and there's some bad. But one of the good things is, like you said, about being closed on Sundays. I remember, when nothing was open on Sundays except the hospitals and things like that. And that's not a bad thing, So thank you for your presentation. But if you can get that to me, I just hate hearing that about the $300, if I may say this, Mr. Chairman, because there's more to that. I mean, we've got to take a look at the child care. Most of the folks I've talked to, my constituents in my area, it's about child care, about having the ability to take care of the child. And one of the parents has got to sacrifice not going back to work to take care of their child. Thank you all. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Can I respond? So one of the areas that kind of allowed families where there's two workers to deal with the child care issue is our restaurant business, which are all retailers naturally. And that's an area probably the hardest hit during the pandemic. If you've been out to eat at all, you've probably felt the effects of the worker shortage. And there's a lot more flexibility in that part of our industry too. One other area that could help, I think, immediately with the restaurant business is if we allowed 18 and over to serve alcohol, that would open up the pool for potential employees for our restaurants. And that would be a kind of a quick fix in that area. That would help, wouldn't solve it, but it would help. So, thank you.
Thanks, sir. Representative Beckler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was mentioned that the average pay is $10 to $15 an hour from the folks y'all represent, and you said plus benefits. How much are those benefits worth, would you estimate, to the individual?
Oh, it's gonna depend on, I guess, the benefit level, the cost of the benefit. But I would just guessing, Kevin, you may have a better idea. I would add another 20 to 30% on top of that. Some of you all that are business owners, is that a reasonable benchmark? Probably. Yeah. Close.
I was very surprised in our survey the number of retailers who are providing health care. Mm-hmm. And I know we do, and that's a major amount that, percentage-wise of their income we do pay.
So that I'm sorry,
that's not in that 10 to 15. I mean, that's on top of that.
Right. So that would take not a wage, but the value of the employment to the individual. It would raise it $12 to $19 an hour, essentially, using the 20 or 30% numbers.
Yeah.
And remember, that's a starting wage of the results we got back. So, and those of you all that have worked in retail or know folks that do, it doesn't take long in retail if you have a good work ethic and you're a superstar. I mean, you can raise up in the ranks pretty quickly in a retail environment.
You can sell pianos. You can move up real fast with us.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, Representative Hale.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all this afternoon for your presentation. Very, very timely and very good information. Mr. Griffin, I'm going to just direct the question to you. I recently had a conversation with one of my retailers, and I've had conversations with a lot of them, but a specific conversation with one of my retailers just a couple of weeks ago, and he runs probably one of the most successful Dairy Queens in this state. I think actually the numbers, he's one of the very top ones in the state of Kentucky. And he recently put out on his marquee starting pay $16 an hour, and kept that there for probably 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month. And then I spoke to him and talked to him about that, and of course they're still just doing the drive-through like most people are. But he told me that at even offering $16 an hour plus benefits, and I think pretty good benefits, that he had hardly anybody. I'm not sure if the number was 0, but I think it might have been 1 above 0 that was interested. And I know that the childcare issue is a big issue. I realize that. But I think in the area that I'm from, that and he certainly agreed with this, that his problem and other retailers in that same type of industry, it certainly is. And there's other factors as well. There's other factors, but one of the big factors is them receiving those extra $300 per week that is keeping people from coming in and going back to work. And I think, like the one representative said over there, we have a situation here that we have one person in this state that I think could really change that quickly if they would, and I would encourage them to do that. But again, in different areas of the state, I know there's different factors there. But what can I go back and tell my retailers? What can I say to them when they're saying to me, we can't offer much more than that? $16 an hour. I mean, that's pretty good working in a Dairy Queen. So what can I tell him and tell others that ask me those same questions? What can I actually tell them from your perspective?
Well, it is a quandary, and I'm not going to shy away from the fact that retail's tough. I mean, it's a challenging industry to go into and a challenging career. And I would agree, $16 an hour in your district's not shabby. Starting wage, I would imagine, too. And that's why we're so excited about the apprenticeship program and some of the training that we'll have coming online, hopefully by next year, is to really get out there and promote the fact that, you know, you can skill up and you can start at a Dairy Queen, but there's more than that. You can become your own Dairy Queen franchisee. You can leap from a Dairy Queen to another type of retail-related business, service business, or not even in retail. Take your training and go to a different career track, and really promote the fact that $16 an hour starting, but there's a whole lot more than that. Now, immediately, we would hope the governor would do something fairly quickly, but it's my understanding that the extra pandemic benefits end sometime in September, so we'll be quickly approaching that. We'll see how things look economically and within the labor force, I guess, as we get into the fall. I wish I had more to say. I'd love to visit with him myself, just so we could chat more about the opportunities I think we have, and to help him, figure out a way to address those challenges.
May I follow up just real quickly, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir. One quick, please.
I'll be very brief. And I know we have Ms. Watts here from the chamber, and recently speaking to my local chamber president as well, they had a job fair, and the chamber, the industries around had almost 200 jobs that they needed to fill immediately, and some of those were a lot more than $16 an hour. And he had 2 people, 2 out of almost 200 positions. And again, I think we have to look at what the reasoning of this is. And so thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate that.
Thanks, sir. Senator Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Griffin and Mr. Cranley, I've appreciated your comments here today. I've heard a lot of comments from my colleagues that are critical of the governor. But in preparation for this meeting today, I think we need to quantify what the federal pandemic unemployment compensation has meant for this state. And I just want to share with my colleagues who are members of this committee today that those additional funds have brought in over $4 billion to this state since the inception of the initial CARES Act back in March of 2020. Okay, now just think about that. Okay, that money's been spent on food, on housing, on clothing, necessities so people can live. And without that $4 billion, I would hate to think the kind of shape or condition the state would be in without that money. And I think our governor's been very sensitive to the needs of Kentuckians in maintaining that kind of compensation, which is, as you said, $300 a week. So, frankly, I support the governor and his position in terms of keeping that money available, because people need that to live off on. Okay, and we talk about people aren't going to work, but I think what we don't talk about, Mr. Griffin and Mr. Cranley, is that half of the jobs that have been lost because of this pandemic are not coming back. Okay, I mean, I think we got to acknowledge that. So there are lesser jobs now than there were, 50% less than there were a year ago. So many people can't go back to work because there's nothing to go back to work to. So I just want to bring that to the attention of the members of the committee, that this money's being used so that people can live, just like we want to live, and that many of these jobs, about half of them, have not come back. So I just want to bring that to the committee's attention as reality of what we've had to deal with over the past 15 months.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Representative White.
Yes, thank you. And thank you all for coming today. There's another angle that I haven't heard talked about much, and I was talking to a logger the other day, and he normally has 9 to 10 employees, and he had enough equipment to run 3 logging crews. Now he's down to 2 employees, can barely get a job done with just 2 employees, but he's having to finance equipment for 3 jobs, and he's getting in a position where he may not be able to make it, and just logging with 1 crew, and that's another point besides. And I know it's desperately needing employees. I talked to a sawmill owner that's 25% employees short. He had to raise all of his employees' pay. And he said he's lost money for the last 2 years. And with this increase in the pay raises, he says he's going to increase his payroll $352,000 a year. That's another angle that's part of it. Thank you.
And in honor of time, this will be our last one, is Representative Roberts.
Thank you for your presentation. First of all, a foundational question for me. How much does it cost to become a member of your organization? What's the annual due?
So the dues are based on sales volume, but our minimum dues in most of our, especially small independents, is $225 per year for a membership.
And do you have a percentage of how many of your members own true small businesses? I think of small businesses as like 10 people or less.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many, what's the percentage there?
We don't, Cassie may have a better idea as far as the membership records. We don't, when they join, we don't ask how many employees you have, but we would guess that about half of our membership's probably in that category. Although I'm always surprised at what you think is a typical small business, and they're employing 40 or 50 employees, even in a small retail shop. I'm always surprised by that.
Mr. Chair, I promise to be brief. May I have a follow-up? Yes. Okay. So help us better to understand the survey data that you gave, because I think that was a lot of your presentation. So could you let me know how many people responded to the surveys? Mm-hmm. And did you, could you perhaps make the questions available to us so we can understand how they were asked? Yeah. And then the final part of that is, how many of your members took advantage of PUA themselves as small business owners, and did they have some feedback on that for us?
Oh, that's a good question. We need to survey that.
Yeah.
I'm guessing more than I would probably.
PPP?
Yeah, the PPP.
Yeah. So I could just tell you, so I belong to a sharing group but all music retailers from around the country, and there's 13 of us, and everyone did.
So,
No.
forgive me, I
That
must
doesn't
not have
tell
spoken
us.
clearly. PPP, one thing. PUA, the Pandemic Unemployment
I'm
Assistance,
sorry.
that a lot of small business owners relied on themselves to keep themselves in business.
Okay.
Thank you. That's going to be all the questions.
We'll survey that.
Thank you all for testimony. A couple things to Mr. Beckler. Actually, I can tell you as an employer, we add on 25% of whatever hourly wage we're paying someone. That's what we budget in all the time. And recently, guys, I just heard Tom Underwood at NFIB give testimony that 90% of all Kentucky employers have open positions unfilled. So it is, and on childcare, guys, if you haven't been noticing your emails from Melanie Baker, she has been bombarding us every day, if not weekly, about how unfairly they have been treated compared to everyone else. So childcare is an issue. It's going to be an issue until the governor actually treats them like he does schools. So it's going to be hard to get the workforce back. But thank you guys for your testimony. I appreciate you guys coming today. And our next presenter will be the Kentucky Chamber. Thank you guys for coming today.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank you.
members.
Good afternoon. I'm Ashley Watts. I'm president and CEO of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce, and it is great to see you all in person and not behind a Zoom screen. And I do want to start off by thanking you all for all of the work in this past legislative session, which was unlike any other we had ever seen. One of the highlights really, I think, was the paying back of the loan of the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund that you guys passed the last couple of days of session and the governor signed into law. And that very much goes into the conversation we're going to have today. But I just want to thank you all for passing those pieces of legislation that really are going to help all of us recover post-pandemic. I don't want to be too repetitive with what the Retail Federation said, but a lot of the same stories we could tell from the chamber perspective as well. And I think one good point to kind of point out is we are now kind of on the other side of the pandemic. I keep saying the light's at the end of the tunnel. We might be at the end of the tunnel by now. Vaccines are obviously readily available. We are encouraging everyone to get vaccinated. We have, I think, about 2% positivity rate. Business is fully reopened. And so things are really looking promising. And I think there's optimism among the business community. But the big issue that we hear about from every single member, and it's not, only retail restaurant, it's healthcare, it's manufacturing, it's banking, is the workforce participation shortage. And you guys have probably heard me over the last several years talk about workforce participation. And like many issues with the pandemic, a lot of our inequities here in Kentucky were heightened. And workforce participation was absolutely one of them. Before the pandemic, we had been making strides in our workforce participation rate. And we had gotten into the low 40s, which we would still like to be higher than the bottom 10. But our workforce participation through collaborations with education, government, businesses was really improving, and we were getting our people into the workforce. Very quickly, last year, as you all know, our workforce participation, we went to 50th in the nation. We have now settled in around 48th in the nation in terms of workforce participation, with only West Virginia and Mississippi behind us. And I think there was a question earlier about how many people have really left the workforce. What is the difference? A good number just to know is that there's 100,000 people less or fewer in the workforce today than there was last March when the pandemic hit. So we have still not gotten back about 100,000 people that were out of the workforce since last March. We can all talk about the anecdotal stories. Representative Hale shared the story about the job fair. We can all drive through, whatever Main Street you live on and see the hiring signs. I recently saw a coupon in a paper saying that if you cut out this coupon and if you fill out an application at this restaurant, you'll get a free value meal. Businesses are being really creative about incentivizing people to come back to work and to get back into the workforce. But it's not just qualitative data and stories. There really is some data to back it up. Right now, there is a big gap between Kentucky's labor force participation rate and that of the national average. In the last several months, I hope you guys have seen this, the Chamber has partnered with UK to produce quarterly economic reports, just to really, coming out of the pandemic, take a snapshot every couple of months on how we are doing with our economy to make sure we're keeping our eye on the ball and making sure that we come out of this. And right now, there is a gap between our average and the nation's average of 4.8%. And basically, this says that the people that have been lost their jobs during the recession are not looking for work in Kentucky as much compared to the rest of the nation. We are almost 5 percentage points lower than the national average in terms of workforce participation rate. Another thing we really want to talk about is basically upskilling, or making sure that we are training our workforce for the needs and the demands of our businesses and our employers. And right now, there are obviously issues with that. There were issues before the pandemic, and there are issues now as we come out of it. One thing that I would like to point out is that our educational attainment levels trails the nation in a pretty significant way. 24.2% of Kentuckians have a bachelor's degree compared to 32% nationally. And so that's an important point when we talk about looking at the budget and funding education. That really does make a difference when it comes in terms of workforce participation and getting people back into the workforce. And where many of our surrounding states have increased their baccalaureate attainment, how many people have those bachelor degrees, Kentucky's has dropped over the last decade. So we definitely need to be moving in the opposite direction when it comes in terms of education and getting our Kentuckians trained, employed, skilled, ready for the workforce. And I think this was mentioned earlier, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, there is an all-time high of job openings. So right now in the United States, the latest numbers, I'll give you some stats really quick, 9.3 million job openings. And just on the Kentucky Chamber website alone, which is not all-inclusive by any means, but we basically say if you are an employer in Kentucky, let us know if you have any kind of job openings, and we will put it on our website. There are over 90,000 openings on our website alone for employers across Kentucky, and I believe over 10,000 of those at least are second chance jobs that if you have been previously incarcerated or have struggled with substance use disorder, they would welcome you as part of their workforce. We are now we're at a 20-year historical average. We have half as many workers as there are available workers as there are open jobs. So there's about 2 open jobs for every 1 worker now, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that's not just the Kentucky Chamber data, that is the BLS data as well. We're also seeing that employees that are in the workforce are working a lot more hours than they were in the last few years, meaning that they may be picking up extra shifts or working for people who have, left the workforce over the last year. A topic of conversation, obviously, when we talk about this is wages. We have seen pretty historic wage growth in the last year. And I think we heard stories about, fast food restaurants hiring at $16, $17 an hour. And the wages are increasing, and that is good. We want wages to increase. We want good paying jobs. But we also have to remember the needs of the small businesses who are still kind of clawing their way out of the pandemic and all of the damage that has been suffered over this last year. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce did a survey recently, and I just wanted to share some of those results that we found interesting. 88% of employers are reporting at some difficulty in finding employees and hiring. 24% say it's very difficult, and 71% say it's much more difficult than it was 5 years ago in hiring. And one other interesting statistic, almost 50% of individuals who lost their job during COVID say they are not actively searching for employment, and that's from the U.S. Chamber data. We also have to acknowledge that this is a very complex and complicated issue. It's not just one reason why this is happening. It's not just the $300. It's not childcare. It's not retirements. It's all of it put together in this kind of perfect storm. We know that some people are still concerned about the safety and the health of their workers or coming back to work. There may also be some vaccine hesitancy, and that's leading to some of these problems. We've talked about childcare. We know the balance between home and work has been extraordinary in this last year. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old, and I often say I feel like I'm a pretty hard worker. I've never worked harder than I have in the last year and a half, trying to work and run a chamber and also homeschool 2 children at home. And we have to acknowledge that is very much part of this issue. We also have to acknowledge that there are retirements. People have decided to switch careers. I don't know if anyone saw the latest issue, or a couple issues ago maybe, of Business First out of Louisville. There was a 2-page spread of retirements in the nonprofit sector in just the last year. So a lot of people have decided to go ahead and retire kind of post-pandemic. And then a lot of talk has been about the federal unemployment insurance benefits of $300. That's obviously part of the equation as well. I like to kind of do the math to see what that averages up to. And if you average that up, it's about $16 an hour, about $15.75 an hour is what that would come to. And so we do have to acknowledge that is part of the issue as well. We have met with legislative leadership about this many times. We have met with the governor's office about this many times. We have written letters, and we do want to acknowledge that it is a multifaceted issue. And the thing is, we've never gone through this before. We don't know the perfect solution because this has never happened before. So it's really kind of an all hands on deck approach. We do believe that we should phase out those federal insurance benefits, UI benefits. We also are in favor of looking at incentives. I know the governor's mentioned that as well. We're very much in favor of seeing what that is and seeing if it could work. And I know for many of you all, we've talked about childcare and how we need to better fund and have more accessible childcare. So it really is a multifaceted solution to this multifaceted problem that we've never faced before. And so just know that the business community is there to help you as you guys kind of figure out what to do about this. But I do think it's a critical issue, and there is not a day that goes by that we do not hear from at least 5 or 10 businesses saying, I can't find workers. What do I do? I'm going to have to shutter my doors. It really is a very real problem that we hear about every single day. And with that, I think I will turn it over to my chairman, Winston Griffin.
Thanks, Ashley. Hello, everyone. My name is Winston Griffin, the second Mr. Griffin to sit in this seat today, so it'll be easy. I'm from London, Kentucky. I'm the chairman of the board and chief executive officer of Laurel Grocery Company. I'm also the current chairman of the board of the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. So Laurel Grocery Company, we are a wholesale grocery institution, which means we sell to independent grocery stores in Kentucky and all of the surrounding states. As such, we have, I always tell people we have 3 sets of employees. I have a set of truck drivers, a set of individuals who work in the warehouse, and a set of people who work in the office doing clerical work. So we have a diverse group of employees. I have about 250 to 275 employees. So the unemployment issue is very real. We've noticed that people are doing the math and understanding that you can make roughly the same amount of money staying at home as you can going to work. And there is a very fine line of what that dollar is. But for an employer we have a very rich benefit package at Laurel Grocery. We have an on-site clinic where all your health care is taken care of for free. We have a 401k and all of the standard benefits that you would imagine that you could do. However, our problem and our primary turnover is in the young employees who do the very difficult work in the warehouse, and they typically care about the number that's in the bottom right corner of their paycheck. The benefits do not necessarily entice them to work at Laurel Grocery. They're young, which means they're healthy, so they don't want health insurance. They are young and they don't want a 401k because they don't think past next week, much less 10 years from now. And I understand that. So it's very difficult to explain a lot of times. The question came up about the total amount of pay, and we actually try to produce what's called a hidden paycheck, where we detail all of the other benefits that the employees receive to explain this is really what you're receiving. It's not just this X dollars per hour. So it's a difficult formula to say this is what you're getting paid. So there's been a lot of discussion about the per hour, but that's just, I wanted to throw that in as one of our issues. So at the Kentucky Chamber, we are very cognizant of the unemployment benefits, and we do not get the impression that they're going to end before the federal government stops them in September. We had a call with the governor's office, several employers, and across the board, they all discussed the difficulty in finding employees at this time. It's a very unique time in our country, in our state especially. So that is pretty much our number one concern right now is unemployment. The child care issue has also come up numerous times, and I heard it spoken of with the group before. I believe those two are tied together. A lot of the workers in child care facilities are lower paid workers, and they too are caught in this conundrum of whether to stay at home and make roughly the same amount as opposed to coming in and working. So until that extra benefit ends, I don't believe the child care situation is going to get much better. Those workers have to come to work as well. So the Kentucky Chamber is cognizant of that. I also would like to point out one of the initiatives that we're doing is the talent pipeline at the Kentucky Chamber, where we have connected employers with schools to determine what type of education is best suited to bring workers into the workforce these days. So we have input from employers so we could better educate children, and that has been a very successful program. So I could talk on and on, but I do know we want to have some questions, and so I'll stop for a moment and let you ask questions.
Thank you, sir. We actually do have some questions. Representative Bojanowski.
Thank you, and thank you very much for being here. I did find another data point that I'm assuming is from the same survey for the U.S. Chamber, and it found in its poll of unemployed Americans that only 16% say that it is not worth searching for a job because of the money they currently earn from unemployment benefits. Now, in contrast to the Retail Federation, that was all unemployed people and not just people the retailers had contact with. But that leaves us with 84% of the people who, even if the pandemic unemployment $300 ends, won't jump into the workforce. So, and then to follow up on Representative Roberts' question, I understand there are 14,000 people receiving unemployment who are small business owners or independently self-employed. And so just reflecting on that, in that 84% of the people will not be motivated by the fact that the pandemic additional $300 ends, combined with Senator Thomas's comment about the economic impact. Can you talk on what might be holding those 84% of the people back from joining the workforce again? And 24% said childcare, 23% said they lacked the skills or experience. But are we, I've heard a lot of comments about how if the governor will just end the $300 payment, that will then have a solution to these jobs that we need to fill. And if it's only 16% of the people, then that's not going to be a solution that's satisfactory. And we may be shooting ourselves in the foot.
Yeah.
Could you comment on that, please?
Absolutely. And I think, like I said, it's a multifaceted issue, and everyone has various reasons of why they have not rejoined the workforce. And I think one thing to point out with the U.S. Chamber survey is that it is a national survey, so it's not Kentucky specific. So I do think it could be different in different parts of the country versus here in Kentucky. But I also think, like I said, about, phasing out the $300, that's just part of the solution. But if we can get that 16% back into the workforce, that's a really large number that would be back in the workforce, earning wages and contributing, to their employer. And so I do think it's a multifaceted solution. It's childcare. You mentioned education. We've got to do better in our what we call upskilling and training up our workforce. We've got to do better in getting more people with that baccalaureate attainment or some sort of degree or credential or certificate. So it's a lot of different pieces of this puzzle. It is absolutely not one solution that's going to solve this issue, but all of it kind of working together. So, 16% would be great to get back in the workforce. And if the $300 is their incentive to not get back in the workforce, we need to absolutely look at that. But if it's childcare, if it's education, we need to look at those pieces of the puzzle as well.
May I ask a very brief follow-up?
Yes, ma'am. Very brief.
And then could you speak on the number of small business or self-employed individuals receiving that money and what a difference it may make in order for them to maintain their businesses? So about 14,000 people
Yeah.
receiving unemployment who aren't going to be searching for employment because they're self-employed or small business owners.
Absolutely. And 2/3 of the Kentucky Chamber's members are small businesses as well. I did want to point that out. And I do think that no one is questioning any of the help, I don't think, of the last year and a half, whether it's the enhanced UI benefits, whether it's extending those benefits to contractors that had never before paid into the system, whether it's the PPP loans. All of that was very much needed. But now that vaccines are available, positivity rates at 2%, schools are now going to reopen, at full capacity, workforce has, no limitations on it. It really is time to try to phase back to what we would deem normal. And so I do think we'll help small businesses the best we can continue and go forward. But part of this, to get their workforce back really does need to be kind of phasing out some of those additional benefits now that the world looks much different than it did last March.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Stevenson.
Thank you. So I've sat here and done just a little bit of quick math, and we're talking about the fact that $300 is keeping some folks from going back to work. So if we look at, for instance, what Rep. Hale talked about, somebody who's offering $16 an hour. So to compete with that, if we pull off that extra $300, which is about $7.50 per hour, and we know that unemployment pays about 30% of what somebody was originally making. So if they're getting another $350, which is about what the $16 an hour would equal out to be, if somebody's getting $350 a week in regular unemployment, that means they were making $1,166 a week. So by asking someone who was making $1,166 a week to go backwards onto $650 a week, that's a huge difference. That's a difference of over $2,100 a month into that household. So I think that something we really need to be cognizant about is trying to force people into taking lesser jobs than they had. And so, yes, retailers, restaurants, we're looking at folks who were making, probably around $10 an hour. And yes, that 16 is better for those people, but it's not better for the people who were making a lot more. Like I said, if that $300 went away and they're only making $350 on regular UI, that's replacing their $1,166 a week paycheck. And so I think that we need to be really cautious with creating career killers by trying to force people back into lesser jobs. And I know that that's a little convoluted. I've got my scratch pad here if after the meeting anybody wants to look at my math. We can talk about that. But so can you speak a little bit as to what we're doing to target that group of people who the $10 to $15 an hour just is not going to cut it for their household? They can't take that kind of pay cut over a year. Right. We're talking about $24,000 less a year that they would be looking at. So what are we doing for those folks and to try to do that? And are we also then looking at the small businesses and the retailers, but, everybody's fussing about $300 a week in taxpayer funds, but McDonald's, Walmart, places like that, when they're paying people, they're on food stamps. They're on government-provided health care. So the taxpayers are footing the bill either way. So wouldn't we also need to be talking about ensuring that people are truly paying a living wage, not poverty wages, and ensuring that they have benefits?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was a political science major, not a math major, so I tried to follow along with that. But no, I think that's absolutely accurate. As there are absolutely the instances that people may not have that job to go back to, but that really is the outlier. Right now, we have two jobs for every one person looking, and it's not just in retail, restaurant, manufacturing. It's in banking and healthcare and education. It really is across almost every single single sector of the workforce. And so I do think there are available jobs. Obviously, in this last year, our economy shifted, the way that we live has shifted, and some of those sectors have shifted. We're going to have to kind of figure that out as we move forward. But I think that upskilling and making sure people are trained and ready to enter the workforce is a very key component of that. And I know some states are actually looking at using some of their federal money to not only incentivize people to go back into the workforce, but to also train them, get them upskilled while they're in the workforce as well. And I think that'd be a really creative solution to look at, especially when we look at how underqualified right now our workforce is in terms of the qualifications that we need for the jobs available today. In terms of wages and benefits, I think Winston kind of pointed it out as well. I mean, fast food jobs are now paying $15, $16 an hour. We've heard of call centers paying $21, $22 an hour that you get to work from your home. And so there has been, I think, probably more time than in recent history, significant wage growth, which is we want wage growth. We want good paying jobs. And so I do think that has alleviated some of the concern about the lower wage jobs. And again, it's a supply and demand issue. It's a competition issue. Employers need workers. And so you see workers that are employers that never before had offered benefits, incentives, insurance, that are now doing that. And so I do think you can find good examples of employers who have really kind of had to increase all of their benefits and their pay to make sure they're attracting the workforce.
So let me speak real quickly, and I'm speaking as the chairman of Laurel Grocery Company at the moment, not the chairman of the Chamber of Commerce. In my opinion, what this program has done is, you always have the group of unemployed individuals. There's always some percentage of unemployed individuals in the state. You also have what we refer to as underemployed. Those individuals who could have employment if they chose it, however, they've chosen not to for whatever reason. This additional pay has increased the number of underemployed. Those individuals, and trust me, in southeastern Kentucky, this happens, where individuals choose not to work because of the government benefits that they're receiving. It's going to be very difficult to reverse that in September when those benefits are gone, those additional benefits. However, everyone needs to pay their rent, everyone needs to eat, and they are going to get back into the workforce, but hopefully there's a better workforce to get back to. We're not trying to decrease anyone's possibilities in life. However, it's just a very unique situation that we're in right now in how many people are choosing not to work despite the fact that there are so many jobs, good paying jobs available.
Thank you, guys. We have 3 more people in the queue, and we're going to move on. Senator Thomas.
Good afternoon, Ms. Watts.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Griffin, good to see you.
Hi.
I think that Representative Roberts, Representative Bojanowski, and my good friend Representative Stevenson have really hit on the right points. We've got to acknowledge that over 14,000 of people who are receiving this pandemic unemployment are business owners. Not workers, business owners. And the fact that, as Representative Stevenson points out, given the current these payments, which Mr. Griffin, I appreciate him acknowledging, people need to eat and to live and to have clothes. That money helps them do that, as opposed to having to work for lower paying wages. So my question to both of you is this: as you know, Ms. Watts, I've been a staunch advocate since I've gotten to the legislature of increasing the minimum wage. And going back to the earlier testimony today of Mr. Todd Griffin, Mr. Kevin Cranley, about how employers are asking or requesting $15 to $16 an hour. And as you indicated earlier, what you've seen from the chamber is people asking $15, $16 an hour. Is the chamber now, this is a direct question to you, is the chamber now willing to get on board to my proposal that as a minimum here in Kentucky, we'll have a minimum wage of $15 an hour? That's a yes or no question.
not at this moment because I haven't seen the legislation, but I do think in years past, we're very willing to be part of the conversation, especially when it's in incremental steps. We are very willing to have that conversation and see if it's something that we would be agreeable to.
Okay. Well, that's a step forward. My final question is this, Mr. Chair. We talk about this labor shortage, but my position has been, for the last year that we don't have a labor shortage here in this country. We have a wage shortage. Okay. I will tell you that my lifestyle is such now that I travel a lot from Kentucky to Georgia to South Carolina. Okay. And everywhere I go among those states and through those states, I see the same signs everywhere. Now hiring, jobs available, people want it. Okay. And this is everywhere in those states. Lexington, Atlanta, Charleston, you name it. Okay. And so what we've got to do, I submit to you, Ms. Watts, and your position, it really is a step forward from what I've seen in the chamber in the past, is that we've got to pay people more. We want to incentivize some people to come to work. The biggest incentive, as Mr. Griffin noted, was what people see in that far corner of their paycheck. When they finish, when they get that pay. How much money am I bringing home? And so I would encourage the speakers before us with the Kentucky Retail Federation and with you, Ms. Watts, and the chamber to look about how we can increase that wage shortage gap. Because I will submit to you, if we improve that wage shortage gap, then we'll see a decline in the labor shortage gap.
Thank you, sir.
I would agree. Excuse me. I would agree that we need to keep people employed. I also would note that we need to keep businesses, in business. If I start my lowest level of worker, where there's no necessary education or experience required, at $15 an hour, well, that's very close to what his supervisor would now be earning. So that directly affects that next position, and on up. So I'm in the food business, which is a very competitive business. Our gross profit is 9, so that's where I'm starting. It's very difficult to have a large increase in wages and be able to stay in business. We've been in business for 99 years, which I thought was a lot until the prior man from the music company put me in my place. So it's a fine balance on how much we are able to pay versus being able to survive. So that there is that component coming from a business owner side.
All right, next is Representative Tackett Lafferty.
I too am a working mother. I have one going into high school, one in elementary school, and one in daycare. So I actually pay childcare costs. So, and during this pandemic, my childcare provider closed, and until Miss Linda could get her vaccination, we were not reopened, and we were willing to wait on Miss Linda because it was a wonderful, it's a wonderful place to send your children. But one of my questions is, I hear you talking about your wages and providing benefits, and I have never been fortunate enough to have this type of benefit. So I'm not sure if you can expand on this, but I see some of the mothers at daycare who are able to use things such as flex spending accounts to pay toward child care. These benefits that you're talking about with regard to the working mothers that we're missing in our workforce, are you offering those types of benefits when you say that these jobs are the wages plus benefits? Are you offering those? Do those include accounts such as the flexible spending?
Yeah, and I can't speak for every business of what they're offering throughout Kentucky, but I definitely know their portfolio has increased. I do want to point out this is a really important topic. In the last year, 3 times the number of women have left the workforce versus men. We have moved 30 years backwards in the gains of women in the workforce in one single year. And so when we talk about these issues of childcare, they really are huge issues that are workforce implications, which impact our whole society. And one thing I should have pointed out earlier is that next month, I think it's in July, the federal child care subsidy will start coming down as well. So if you are a family that I think makes $150,000 or less less a year, you will be eligible for $300 per child per month. And so we talk about various solutions to get people back to work. I do believe that could probably help some of the working parents that have had to stay at home. But definitely expanded benefits when it comes to childcare, flexibility, flexible spending. We have highly encouraged all of that in the last year, even just being able to work remotely when your kids are at home and maybe do some of the office work at night. We have basically encouraged employers in this kind of survival mode that we've been in to be as innovative and flexible as possible with their workforce, and they've really done that. But I do think it makes a good point, and it's very much part of this equation, and it's going to take a lot longer to get out of this than it took us to get into this.
Thank you. And Representative Dotson?
Thank you, Chairman Pratt. I just want to make note that in Kentucky, average rent is $773 a month. And, we're looking at $1,200 a month in the extra benefit. When you look at the total package, there's something I think that we're not looking at totally, is that a lot of people don't just qualify for this benefit. They qualify for food stamps. They qualify for free childcare. So when you look at all the package incentives that they get to be government incentivized to stay home, I think, and it's my personal opinion, we have a broken system that we need to look at and revamp the system, because many people engage into that system and they know the ins and outs of the system. So as legislators, we need to take a deep look on how we need to fix this system, because there are some people that are thriving during this while other people are still struggling. And on another note, and correct me if I'm wrong, but a recent study that I looked at, that Kentucky is dead last in economic recovery across the United States. So those are some things that I have observed with employees that I have that qualify for various different benefits that we're not talking about today. But when you look at all the government subsidies that are out there, that leaves us in a very vulnerable position going forward. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Representative Gooch is going to be our last question of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't necessarily have a question, more of a comment. And my comment is, as someone that's a small business owner, and who knows what it was like to risk everything that you have to develop a business and create jobs, and I know what it's like to lay awake at night, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning and worrying about whether you can be able to make the payroll or the payment to the bank or whatever. And I think that all of us want to make sure that we're paying, providing benefits and paying wages that because employees are really family, especially in small businesses. And but I think that oftentimes people who maybe have never had to provide a service or product or whatever and work to do that and market it or whatever, don't necessarily understand that, when you're paying someone, that person has to be able to produce enough product or enough services that you can pay them whatever you're paying them, and then have a little bit of markup that you can pay the rent and the bank and the mortgage and everything else. And some people, unfortunately, don't even understand that. It's like, well, I want to start in a management position, or I think you need to pay me this wage or that wage. And so, to make statements that, we have a wage crisis or whatever, if I think we have a crisis when some folks don't understand that the only way that I can maintain this job is to be able to produce enough that my employer can make a profit and stay in business. And that's what it's all about. And I think we maybe ought to be teaching that a little bit in school. But I do agree with your comments that everyone out there can benefit themselves and their marketable skills as far as getting a better job if they are reinvesting in going back to school and attaining education. And I think that's key. And, we no longer live in a economy after the Second World War where a business would hire you with no training, no skills. They would train you, and you could work there for 45 years, and then probably your son or daughter could go to work there too, and they would train them. And now we have to be training ourselves a lot more, because we're probably going to be having, because we're not going to get that job that we're going to stay in for 40 years, we're going to have to be changing jobs. Mm-hmm. And that changing jobs involves us being able to hone ourselves and and come up with new skills change jobs to be able to make those changes. But I just wanted to say that, Mr. Chairman, and that just should be part of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you guys for your testimony today. A couple of things I think you all mentioned that was really important, and that's workforce participation at 56%. That means we're getting very, very, very close. For everybody's working, we have someone not working. Now, you also mentioned 90,000 jobs. Guys, that's significant. And I can tell you, Pratt's Lawn Landscape is looking for helpers. We're not part of that 90,000. I just talked to a retailer on the way in, and actually a manufacturer on the way in. Actually interviewed a young man and offered him $24 an hour. And his reply was, "I'm not working for $2 an hour." He said, "Excuse me," I said 24. He said, "Yes, but I make 22 sitting at home." I would question your math, ma'am, on that, because evidently he's done his, but he said $22 an hour. Again, we'll see if that number is correct or not. But I will tell you this, I drove by a tractor trailer parked on the road on the way here that said, is 80 in Georgetown, $18 an hour starting wage. And so I'm telling you, the jobs are out there. And for everyone's arguing about the $15 an hour minimum wage, evidently you did not study economics and understand that if you do this, you're going to drive inflation through the roof. It all comes down to a sliding scale. You want inflation, then, and it's already here, that will drive it through the roof. So thank you guys for your testimony. Next presenter, please approach the bench.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Chad Harpole, Director of Government and Community Affairs with Century Aluminum.
Karen Cecil, Human Resource Director for North America, Century Aluminum.
And I'm Kenneth Calloway. I'm the Corporate Director of Human Resources with Century Aluminum. If you wonder if I know Representative Calloway, we were neighbors growing up. He lived just past the bathroom on the next bedroom on the right whenever we were growing up. So he is my brother.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the invitation to come speak to you today, and thanks to the members of the committee. I'm Chad Harpole with Century Aluminum. Want to give you a brief overview for those of you that aren't familiar with our company. We are a primary aluminum smelter, so we literally make the raw commodity from bauxite. We have 3 smelters in North America, 3 of the 6 remaining aluminum smelters, 2 in Kentucky. One of them is in Hallsville, just east of Owensboro. The other one is in Seabury, just south of Henderson, right on Representative Gooch's district, Senator Mills. So happy to see you all. Our Hallsville Smelter is the last smelter in a NATO country that makes military-grade aluminum, so it plays a vital role in national defense as well as the aviation industry. And we have 1,200 employees in Kentucky between our 2 smelters. Our average salary and benefits exceeds $100,000 a year for those employees, so we're pretty high-paying jobs. While we're not a small business per se, we have dozens upon dozens of small businesses that rely on our business running every day through the use of contractors, electricians, truck drivers, etc., that are in and out of that plant or both of our plants every single day. We are a little bit different in the sense that we are a commodity traded business, so we don't get to decide what we sell our aluminum for. The London Metal Exchange decides what the price of aluminum is. So the only thing we can do is control the input cost. As many of you are aware that have been around the legislature a long time, power is our number one cost driver. Each smelter in Western Kentucky uses more power per day than the city of Lexington, so just massive amounts of electricity through those plants. And then the second component is obviously our labor cost. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen to talk a little bit of the issues. We've been very fortunate the last few years to grow both of our smelters in Kentucky and our plant in South Carolina. That is a very good thing for our business and a very good thing for the Commonwealth.
Hi, as I said, I'm Karen Cecil. I'm the HR director for the North America group, so I travel between the 3 plants, the 2 in Kentucky and the 1 in South Carolina. We do face very similar problems with workforce in Kentucky as well as South Carolina. Very similar to what we've heard for retail today, but yet somewhat different. We start out bringing a production employee in, and this is someone who just has to be 18 years old, pass a drug test, and have some type of work experience, and the lowest paid wage is $24.43. They come in with full benefits the day they start work: healthcare, vision, dental. They can build a pension plan. One of the plants has 401k, one doesn't, but we are a unionized facility, so they have a little bit different benefit package, but they can work all they want. The problem we're having today is hiring people. We're under a new regime, and Kenneth will talk a little bit about that in a minute, but we've been adding people just this year. We've probably hired already 60. I'm still looking for about 40 in both of the Kentucky plants, and we cannot find the people. They'll schedule an appointment to come for an interview, and they won't show up. But some of the problems we're facing that haven't even been talked about yet today, the drug issue is a big issue that we face every day. Out of 10 applicants that come in, we send them back to have a drug screen, and about 3 or 4 out of every 10 cannot pass the drug test. Even we tell them before they come, they have to take the drug test. They are bringing fake urine, taping that to the sides, inside parts of their bodies and legs, to the point we've had to have them start to strip down and wear a gown to be drug tested. So drug testing is a major issue for us. Another big issue that we're facing is with crafts, maintenance, mechanical and electrical being worse than mechanical, but we start them out at $30 an hour. And they grow, as they bid in different jobs, they make more money, but there just are not enough electricians to be had. We are starting to participate in the Kentucky FAME with the technical school systems, which has been a challenge for us with the union environment, but because we need those so bad, the union has begun to partner with us. And so we're going to start 4 people at each of the plants in that Go FAME program this year, this school semester. We do believe the enhanced employment benefits hurt us a little bit, but it's not just that. The stimulus money that have come from a federal level have also, we had 2 employees quit in the last 2 months that when we did an exit interview, they told us, I've got enough money to be off the summer. I might come back and see you when fall hits, because they got enough stimulus money and unemployment that they don't have to work. That's a fact. Two employees very much did that. The food supplement money that they've received from children being out of school, some of our employees have 4 or 5 kids, so that adds up and puts extra money in their pocketbooks. Another issue that we face greatly is the FMLA benefits. Intermittent is the worst for us as an employer. We run 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. We can't close. So if something happened, if we lost power or we didn't have enough employees to run a line and we had to shut that line down, it would be very unlikely that we would start it up, because it's millions of dollars to start a line up. So we have to be very strategic. And when employees take intermittent FMLA, we can't plan for that because we don't know when they're going to take it. So that's another issue that we face that we would seek some help on. Of course, some of our employees, we have a couple of 2 different generations. Some of our employees have been with us 40 years. We lose 50% now in 2 months. They start 2 months later, they'll either not show up or just say they can't handle the work we have, actually. But those are the big issues that we're facing in our company and what we're here to seek help on. Kenneth?
Yeah, so to carry on with Karen and what she had stated, we're no stranger to a lot of you folks here in Frankfurt, and we appreciate the support, as being the largest aluminum producer in the U.S., as well as, I think, the only state in the union with 2 smelters. We appreciate the support you guys have provided through the years, both our employees as an employer, as well as the national and strategic relationships that we have. We've undergone a great deal of change over the last few months, and then I was just going to discuss that just briefly here. Our current Chief Operating Officer, Jesse Gary, who some of you may have known, who was largely instrumental in the Section 232 initiatives with the 2 previous presidential administrations, will be taking over as our CEO on July the 1st. He has a lot of new great ideas for the company, looking to grow the company both here in Kentucky and South Carolina. Just last month, John DeZee, who spent many months in these halls, roaming these halls back in 2015, has taken over as general counsel. He worked a lot with you guys on our power initiatives. Our Kentucky plants have struggled a bit over the course of the last few years. We have recently, in February, brought an Icelander. So if any of you guys in Davis County or Henderson County see an Icelander wandering around and pointing in our direction, his name is Gunnar Gudlagsson, and he has been operating a world-class smelter in Iceland for the last nearly decade, and he has made some significant improvements to our Kentucky and South Carolina smelters over the course of the last few months. We've recently also brought on a gentleman by the name of Matt Aboud, who came from Norsk Hydro, and he's going to be overseeing our sustainability and our green aluminum initiatives that will be working toward over the course of the next few years, which will play a primary role in the future of this organization. And as Chad was talking about the commodity price of aluminum, the LME, that has increased substantially over the course of the last few months, as well as the Midwest premium. So those dollars that we get for delivering here in the Midwest, those dollars have increased. We're restarting capacity in South Carolina. We're committed to restarting each cell that's been out at Hallsville. We want to restart that at some point, as well as make improvements at Seabury. So we feel like we have all of the pieces of the puzzle there. We're just missing kind of one ingredient, and that really is our employees. And so we need additional workers to be able to man these jobs. As Chad was stating, our median employee made $107,000 last year, including compensation and benefits. So we're a good paying employer. As the committee's aware, and as an 8th generation Ohio Countyan, we know that Kentuckians can stack up against any other worker in the U.S. No one works in any harder than a Kentuckian. No one takes more pride in their work. But I think we've done them somewhat of a disservice with some of the incentives that we provided them to be able to choose to not work, to be honest. And everyone here is familiar with the time value of money, and if we take any of you folks here and force you to retire a year and a half early, you guys may not be ready for that. Same way with our employers. We've taken some of them out of the workforce for 18 months. So we've taken 18 months of pension away from them. We've taken 18 months of 401k away from them because they're not able to save for their retirement. So that's putting them an automatic 18 months behind. And realize that some of these programs were put in place for the pandemic, and those things are necessary to do that. But we just ask for your help going forward to be able to entice those employees to come back into the facilities, whether it's through the reduction in the benefits, through drug legislation to make sure that we're able to control those types of situations. So with that, I'll end my comments.
And one thing I'm going to ask Karen to hit on that has not been mentioned today is, the aluminum smelter is not the easiest place to work. It's not the air-conditioned Capitol Annex, let's just put it that way. The stress that it's putting on the current employees that are there, they're having to work mandatory overtime and having to work weekends and having to fill extra hours is kind of the unspoken heroes through all of this. They're the ones still showing up to work and spending time away from their families. As Karen mentioned, we were declared an essential business by the governor and the president early on because the aluminum smelter, you just don't hit stop and the assembly line stops and you come back 2 months later and pick up where you left off. We are a 365-day business. And as Karen said, if one of our cells, if power goes down for 6 hours or something happens to our plant, you're looking at $50 to $100 million to restart a plant, and that's just not economically feasible. So I'll let Karen talk a little bit about what she's hearing on the floor from the fatigue and stress factor, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions except from the gentleman from Breckenridge 10.
So the not being able to hire as quickly as we need to, and it's a bigger component because it does take some time to train those employees for safety purposes and the different types of work that we have. So even if we brought in 50 tomorrow, it's going to be 4 to 6 weeks before they could really hit the floor and operate properly. So the current workforce, some of them are being forced to work 7, 16 days in a row. Again, part of that's from a union environment, but the junior man gets the force over and over and over. But they are becoming very fatigued. They call off work, causes another person to have to stay over and work. So ours is not all about the money. Our people are making good money, good benefits. They have 3 to 6 weeks of vacation. We have 12 holidays a year. So it's not that we're not offering a good service to our employees, but our work is physical. It's very taxing. It's hot. I have to admit, I sat on a boat over the weekend at the lake for 1 hour and couldn't stand it, but our employees are manually working in heat hotter than that. I can't even describe to you how hot it is. So they have to stay physically fit, watch their intake, water intake, food intake, but we're struggling finding employees.
Thank you, guys. We have some questions, of course.
Okay.
Representative Bojanowski.
Thank you, and I'm sorry that I had not heard of your company before. It's a very important part of Kentucky's business structure, I believe. So thinking about some of the discussion about redistricting is that our state has had a shift of people away from the rural areas. Is that impacting the number of people who might be available to work? And kind of second to that is, have you tried to bring in people from out of state, across the nation even, and what kind of barriers or issues have you had with that?
We have tried to bring in some from out of state because as smelters close down, we try to partner with those other smelters who have closed in recruiting those employees to come work for us. So we do that every chance we get because, again, aluminum is more of a dying breed, so we want that experience, and we'll hire from those no matter where they come from first up.
And if I could ask a very quick follow-up?
Quick follow-up. I've already stopped taking people questions, but yes,
okay, so how much more would this have to impact you to get to a point where you would consider moving your production to another state?
Yeah, that's a good question. So there hasn't been a new smelter started in the U.S. for nearly 30 years. So we would be unable to move to another state. It would be a curtailment of the facility.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to tell you, everybody's in the queue right now. We'll get to ask a question after that. Sorry, you're out of luck. Next, we have Representative Timoney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow up with that question, have you thought about moving your South Carolina facility to Kentucky?
Like I said,
I worry about Miss Cecil traveling back and forth. It would be a whole lot more effective and efficient if you all were just,
It's kind of fun going.
No,
it's closer to the beach. So
well, that ultimately was the purpose of my question, and I do appreciate the perspective because definitely this industry, when you talk about median income, that's phenomenal because ultimately people talk about the bottom line. That's the bottom line. It is really hard work. I have heard about your company before, and I really appreciate the work that you do, Kentucky. But
we do chuckle at what you said, but when we were struggling with the power contract for the last couple of years at our South Carolina plant, we did consider the fact of moving that business up here and expanding the 2 Kentucky facilities. That had been laid out and talked about, but it is very difficult to do that with environmental issues and
I will say it's something our company constantly looks at and Representative Gooch and Senator Mills and folks in the Economic Development Cabinet constantly ask us about. There is actually a footprint at our Seabury facility that we could add on to Seabury if the economic forces allow, and if we see the stability through the upcoming years, through tariffs and everything else, and we control the China situation, which is really that is the number one outside impact, I think, on our business, then I think it's something that we would look at. But we have made well over $200 million of investment in our 2 Kentucky facilities just within probably the last 3 to 4 years. And little quick fact about Seabury, I talked a little bit about Hallsville, but if you have a vehicle in the parking garage that was assembled in North America, and you pop the hood and see all of your HVAC lines in that vehicle that was assembled in North America, it's got aluminum from Seabury in it. So we're proud of that fact.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. McCormick, did you have a question or statement?
I just had a question.
I would say yes. I would be willing to entertain that. The problem we have with drugs, our biggest concern with drugs in the workforce is because of the processes that we have to, it's a very we're very safety conscious. And we, as I'm sure some of you heard, we had a fatality at the Seabury plant last year. And even though we do random drug testing and new hire drug testing, we did find drugs in that employee system, which it's a very big safety concern that we have. But I do think we're going to have to open up to more things than we have in the past. We've reduced we had a felony restriction, and we've reduced that from 7 to 5. We're talking about reducing that even further. And I would tell you, yes, I would entertain working with someone on that. Both. We're going to have to. I mean, we're going to have to look at every possibility to get employees.
Would you turn your mic on?
There's a lot of federal and state money being spent on drug rehab. So if our programs are good and if they're successful, it all depends on the individual, how motivated they are. Mm-hmm. So maybe a second chance with some of these people would be a good resource. So, and then of course in Eastern Kentucky we've had all the with the war on coal, the laid off miners and so forth. So if those people could go underground and work hard physical labor, our workforce has been bleeding out, people leaving, but they would love to come back home, literally. A lot of them have left to go to the plants in Georgetown, Buffalo, West Virginia, etc. So, it's... They're willing to move. They're willing to relocate for good jobs. So,
well, we are open to any new possibility to get the employees that we need.
I'll get your contact information.
Okay.
It's only fitting. Our last questioner of the day is Representative Callaway.
I do appreciate you all coming today, and they're in my district, so you guys have a great impact in our community there in Hallsville and Hancock County, and as well as Breckenridge over into Ohio County. Probably about 5 districts in here just in that plan alone that you guys help support families there. So we appreciate what you do. I also appreciate you highlighting the issue with the drug issue. A lot of people don't realize how much that affects rural Kentucky, especially when it comes to manufacturing and the safety issue that is there. And there was some great legislation passed last year, and I think that there will be more coming this year as we war this problem, and hopefully we can partner with some things that would help you guys do what you're trying to do and move forward with your business. And then my last question would be, actually my only question would be Mr. Callaway as to who he thought was his best brother growing up. So I thought I'd throw that out there.
So Josh is a self-taught pianist, and he's a phenomenal pianist, which sounds great on this side of self-taught. On the other side of self-taught, it was not so great in a 14 by 70 mobile home with 50-year-old trailer that was out of tune. So it was not Josh. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, thank you guys for your testimony. One thing that one of the questions, Ms. McCormick, was about random drug testing and pre-drug testing. I can tell you my company does it. And the reason we do it for, well, two reasons. One is because we get a big discount on our unemployment insurance. Make no doubt about it. It's a big deal. Second thing is you don't do random and somebody gets hurt on the job site and that person next to them turns up dirty. I will guarantee you, you're getting sued. They're not going to sue the person with drugs. They're going to sue the employer. And we still do random drug testing, and I run a lot of landscape business, but we know good and well if we don't do that, we are going to get sued. So, and we've had the same issue you got. It's amazing how many times they come back with the urine test less than body temperature, and they get kicked out and get sent home. But it is an issue that we're working at, and I'm a second chance employer, by the way, too. So, but again, if you don't do that, I'm telling you, you just go ahead and decide who you want to give your company to because you're going to get sued. So thank you guys for your testimony. Amazing, $107,000 a year job, and you can't find employees. So with great benefits. So thank you guys very much for your testimony today.
Thank you for having us.
At this point in time, would FGA come to the podium and please present?
Good afternoon. My name is Joe Horvath. I'm a senior fellow with the Foundation for Government Accountability. Co-chairs Pratt, King, Co-chair Schroeder. Thank you for allowing me to appear before your committee and address the nationwide issue of labor shortages and federal unemployment benefits. As I just said, my name is Joe Horvath. I'm a senior fellow with FGA. FGA is a nonpartisan, nonprofit, 501c3 organization with on-the-ground liaisons in 32 states and a national network of hundreds of policy champions. We are promoting policy reform in every state and Washington, D.C. FGA promotes welfare, workforce, and healthcare reforms to transform lives through work. We believe that America works when America's working. Over the last 18 months, I have been to a lot of states to talk about unemployment policy and seen how they responded to COVID, how they handled the increase in fraud, and now how they're choosing to manage their reopening. On that note, I'd like to start by saying thank you to this legislature. This legislative session, you were among the first states to pass a set of important, federally recommended measures to combat unemployment fraud. That kind of policy leadership is a strong indicator that the individuals in this room are problem solvers. The fact that you've called this hearing is also a sign that you're problem solvers. Well, right now, Kentucky is among half of American states with the same problem: their continued participation in federal unemployment bonuses. 26 states have already recognized the problem and took action. And they all approach their decision from different sets of circumstances. Louisiana, the latest state to announce, has a Democrat governor and an unemployment rate 50% higher than Kentucky. South Dakota never shut down for COVID and has rejected a previous unemployment benefit boost offered after CARES initially expired. Maryland is a Beltway state with a Democrat majority legislature. Ohio is one of the hardest hit states in America for COVID cases and unemployment fraud. And of course, states like Florida and Texas generally operate under the presumption that being pro-jobs is also being pro-worker. The states that have announced opt-outs are not a monolith. They're diverse, they have different challenges, but they came to the same correct conclusion. The economy is opening up, businesses are trying to hire, and there are jobs to be had. In that way, Kentucky's just like them. Before I get into the data and the research, I just wanted to share a quick story. I grabbed dinner in Louisville last night in a place near the airport. And they have a restaurant there, but only the bar half of it was open. So I sat down for a quick dinner, and there was a sign outside that said, "Dear valued guests, being short-staffed is the new pandemic in the hospitality industry. Please be kind and patient with our staff." Being short-staffed is the new pandemic. It's not just one restaurant in one town either. Trade organizations, business groups, employers all over the state are saying the same thing. We know because we just heard them here at this committee. On top of that, letters urging an opt-out were sent to the governor on behalf of NFIB, the Chamber of Commerce, the Retail Association, the Restaurant Association, grocers, women's businesses, manufacturers. The list goes on and on. Even the Funeral Directors Association joined in, and if they can't tolerate dead slow business, nobody can. This is a consensus among employers of this state. The federal unemployment bonus is making it more difficult to hire workers and to give them the good-paying jobs they have to offer. To deny that is simply anti-reality and anti-jobs. Of course, the data is also on their side. Nationwide, there's a record number of open jobs, 9.3 million. That's nearly 3 times higher than the number of people on long-term unemployment right now. There are jobs all over America. Of course, there are jobs here in Kentucky, too. The Chamber of Commerce says there are 90,000 open jobs in Kentucky, based on their website results, and that the state has recovered a little more than 2/3 of its pre-pandemic jobs. FGA research projected a similar number with 112,000 open positions. In May, NFIB reported a record number of small businesses with job openings they couldn't fill. Recent FGA polling showed business owners showed 73% having difficulty hiring, and most agreeing that the 300 bonus was a major cause. The temporary federal pandemic unemployment programs were created for 3 reasons. 1, states were shut down. 2, shutdowns closed businesses and killed jobs. And 3, normal work search requirements were temporarily lifted so people could stay home, thus slowing the spread of COVID-19. None of those reasons remain the case. Kentucky is fairly far along in its reopening process. Businesses have adjusted to operate safely and are open. Work search requirements are back in place. Normal is speeding back. 26 states have announced they will opt out early, and Quinnipiac polling shows most Americans agree with that decision. Some say the federal bonus doesn't create a disincentive to work. Now, many of these people, some of them have never seen a spending program they didn't like. And jumping through hoops to subvert what we all see with our own eyes. We're paying people not to work. Some Kentuckians can collect nearly $45,000 in per year equivalent cash and cash type benefits in lieu of work. People respond to incentives. Economist Casey Mulligan observed this when looking at job openings data and unemployment bonuses. In August of 2020, the first full month without the full $600 unemployment bonus, job openings decreased sharply. The rate of job openings decreased sharply as people started taking those jobs. In the first full month in which the $300 bonus came back, the amount of open unfillable jobs increased sharply. Further, the very fact that a bonus creates disincentive to seek and accept suitable work is implicit in the fact that Congress itself chose to reduce the unemployment bonus from $600 to $300 when it passed the American Rescue Plan Act. Even President Biden doesn't seem to want to extend it past September. So they say there's nothing new under the sun, and they're right. All the things Kentucky employers have been communicating to this legislature and the governor are the same thing that their counterparts in other states are saying. The only difference is that their governors listened. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you for, there's handouts in your packet here. Actually, I just looked at them, so myself, sorry about that. But any questions for the presenter? It's late in the day, so we have none. So thank you very much, sir. Appreciate your hand. Also, I want just a couple things I want to touch base real fast. Thank you guys for attending today. You know, and we talked about the unemployment, and I want to applaud the governor in the fact that he said he's going to give an incentive to have people return back to work. I'm applauding for that, but I hope there was 2 examples in there, and I hope he's done his math or his advisors have done their math. If they follow Connecticut's path and keep the $300 and offer $1,000 to return to work, you get $125 a week if you return to work extra, or you get $300 to stay home a week. Guess what? UI loses. They're going to stay home. I would encourage him to look at Arizona's example, where they stopped the 300, upped it to 2,000 if you work for 10 weeks. This is a better plan. This will get people back to work. And unless the governor comes out and says, we're going to incentivize people $3,600 for the next 12 weeks to come off unemployment, there's no incentive. It's just do the math, guys. We have to get people back to work. And I think that just to offer them $1,000 or whatever, those two examples, that will not get anything other than it sounds good and it sounds like he's done something. So again, I would encourage him and his advisors take a hard look. Let's actually get Kentuckians back to work. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned.